everyone. Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting. And for me, a late night episode of the Indie Show, but I got a bunch of West Coasters with me. So we are doing this tonight. And Amazon may have decided not to go to the end of Paper Girls, but we are going all the way to the end tonight, talking about volumes 5 and 6. And I got my Paper Girls crew with me. We got Rena. What is going on?
Hello. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
No, not too bad. Living the dream, as they say.
Well, you can't ask for anything more than that. We got our superstar volleyball player. We got Kate. What is going on?
Hi. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I am glad you could be here as well. Are you having a good evening? Good. And last but not least, we have our almost asleep, half awake, poor school teacher hanging out. We got Ian. What's going on, Tacoma?
Not much. No, I'm awake now. It was yesterday that I was exhausted. It just every beginning of every school year, I'm tired because I'm not used to like the routine, getting up early, and today is the first full week of school, and they start soccer tryouts right away. So I've been coaching 2 hours after school every day. Still hot and sunny out, but I loved your introduction. Amazon may not have gone to the end, but we are.
That's right. So we're going all the way to the end. So first question is, obviously we will be talking spoilers. We got GT Key in the house. Let's do a little shout out first. Some guy named John. Yeah, I don't know who that guy is. We got Rena talking to some people in the chat. We got Life with 2 YouTubers. Not sure who that is either, but hey, we appreciate you stopping by. We got Jay in the house. What is going on? As he says, West Side is the best side. There you go. So, in general terms, we will be talking full spoilers for the end of this, but general terms to start out with, Rena, what did you think of the last 2 volumes? Did they stick the landing for you, or were you somewhere else? Were you disappointed, happy? What did you think of the end wrap-up of Paper Girls, these 2 volumes?
I have mixed feelings on it because I feel like they, I can't even describe it. Like, just in my brain, I think of it as a story flow. I think they brought it to a close pretty seamlessly. Like, it seemed to kind of fall into place, but I think it was a little too fast. And there's a couple of different scenes where, like, explicitly, I think they did it too fast, and I'll show you guys as we go through and we talk about it. So I would say that they brought it down and they wound it down well, but I think it was a little too quick. They were trying to wrap it up. Yes. It's still, like, out of everything else, it still confused me. I mean, all the girls separate, and, it's like you don't know how they got there or what is happening. I appreciated the ending where you have, like, everybody there right at the end, and then it's the conclusion. I thought that was well done, but, like, everything before that, you're like, what is going on? So,
all right. Kate, what about you? What do you think about how they wrap this up?
I liked the finality. Like, I liked how it ended, and I liked the way it ended. It was like it wrapped up nicely. It was really confusing in a lot of the parts so I really in-depth read it yesterday and last night and today. But I skimmed through it for the first time, and I skim through my books and then I actually read them, so that's fresh,
Yeah.
So when I was flipping through it, it was really confusing, and I was like, oh, this is really confusing. Maybe when I actually read it, I'll understand it more. And I feel like I understand it a little bit more, but not that much more. So it was still really, really confusing to me.
Yeah.
But I liked the way that they were all together, like Rena said at the end, and just it came to a nice close, I think, but it was a little bit rushed.
Yeah. So, and we know that you didn't quite get a chance to finish this on the reread, but you have read it. So it's not like you haven't read it. So what did you think of the ending overall?
In general, I remember enjoying the ending. So it's really different. I remember getting very lost reading it, but enjoying the ending and thinking it was a nice story. And I think I said to the gang here that you really have to not focus on the whys and wherefores of time travel and just focus on the friendship of the four girls. But having actually reread it in this format rather than in monthlies, I found the story wasn't as confusing trying to follow everything that was going on.
Right.
Like, I don't know that I even remembered like Wari and Japo, because between volumes like 2 and 3 there was just a big break, or between volumes 4 and 5 there was a big break in the publishing schedule. It might have been more than a month between issues. So I think there was like just some things that didn't click at all that now reading it all together did click. So both the friendship part of the story was still good, but also now I'm following the entire story better and not as confused as I was the first time through.
Okay. So for me, and Rena pointed this out backstage before we started, that the one thing I did not want when we ended the last show was pretty much exactly what happened. Which is that I did not want the girls to like not remember, like, because we'd seen like Aaron and Tiffany, we'd met them further down the road and they had no memory of what had occurred. And I was like, well, I don't want that. Like, I want them to like, and that's exactly sort of where this goes. I will say, like, I was the first two things that was not like too upset by the fact that it was kind of confusing and wasn't sure what's going on. I was, if it had ended on chapter 29, I would have been pretty disappointed in how it ended. Like, in the way they tried to tie everything back together, I did not enjoy a lot of the way they were trying to tie that together at the end. The final issue with them kind of back in their original time made up for a lot of that for me. The way they handled that, I thought that was really well handled. And I thought, given everything that the way the story was, I thought that final issue made a lot of it work that wasn't working for me right up until then, overall, because it was super confusing and it was just like what is happening? And it was going down the quickly could see it was going down the road I didn't want it to. So, but I will say the final issue rights a lot of the ills that I have about this, mostly about volume 6. And yeah, so overall, I think I did enjoy it. Not quite as much as I hoped in terms of the landing, but it did actually, it worked. And I think that was the big thing. Even though I wanted something different,
well,
it worked. And for that, I can't complain too much. So, Lasso.
So here's the thing about volume 6. It wasn't like the volume started to wrap it up until that last issue.
Yeah.
Like it started expanding it more and more into like crazy ways. So you didn't feel like you were reaching towards a conclusion until right at the end.
Yeah.
Right. I thought they were going to kind of like, okay, this is as far and wide as this story gets, with like this time period, that time period, with this Wari, with Japo and being grandfather, and now we're going to kind of slowly bring it together. But all of a sudden we've got like, they're scattered and there's more timelines and there's more, versions of themselves at different ages. And so it didn't feel like volume 6 was even trying to wrap it up until right at the end.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there. It was a little chaotic.
And really, I think for me, and I don't want to spend too much time on volume 6 before we go back and talk about volume 5, but for me, like, I think really most of the problems in volume 6 were issue 29, because they didn't really get to any of it until they got to issue 29, and then they tried to pull it all together. And that for me was because they've been expanding, and then issue 29, they're like, okay, it's all done, and then like we get kind of an epilogue is what 30 is, and 30 makes it work for me. 29, I feel like it's kind of a mess, which is maybe that's where Rena's going to go with a lot of her. They rushed it. We'll see. But before we spend too much more time on the ending, let's jump back into volume 5 here at the beginning of this thing. And we'd left them going into the far future for the first time, beyond sort of our present and into the farther future. And of course, like every volume, it starts with a dream, and this time it's Mac having a dream where she's taking out monsters in a library and that kind of stuff. So what do you think about the start of this and their adventure in the future here that we get to kick off with? Rena, what did you think about this start of volume 5?
I feel like they transition pretty well because, like, you know, they talk about, like, all right, you know, we need to go. I think it was kind of funny though that based on her dream, Mac's dream, that they just went and found the library. Like,
Yeah.
what if she had dreamt about a soda shop? Would they have gone to a soda shop instead? I don't know. But I thought that was kind of funny that, you know, she kind of had the intuition to go to the library, which, I mean, ultimately does push them in the right direction.
Right.
I was kind of cracking up over how they think, you know, the future is going to be like the lady who's, you know, selling, you know, the contraband. She just moves her robe and she's an inner galaxy. Like, someone explain that to me.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was very interesting, and I did kind of like the world building because, like, you had gotten all these far off shots of, you know, the buildings and the neon lights and stuff like that. But it was kind of fun on some of the closer up shots, like seeing how the world kind of functioned a little bit.
Well, and underneath all the fancy like buildings, as you see, like the old city is still kind of there.
Right? Yeah. The Cleveland Public Library down the bottom there. Yeah.
What about you, Kate? What did you think of this Mac's dream and our little transition into the future and what the future kind of looks like here?
I thought the dream, it was fun how they tied in, like, how the worms were, like bookworms. Sorry, am I breaking up?
A little bit. Keep going.
Okay.
Try again. You're okay.
I thought it was funny that, like, the worms were, like, bookworms.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of, that was really cool. And then just, like, honestly, the colors for the skyline and everything compared to, like, their outfits and everything their outfits are pretty, like, dulled down, especially in this lighting. And then the skyline is really pretty, this part.
Yeah. Very bright and yellow, and like you see, like, it's like how,
and then
they're very subdued.
And then when they start walking around in it, they, like, sort of just, like, their outfits are suddenly brighter, and, you know, like, they look like they're part of the scenery now. So they just kind of, like, meld into the scenery. But yeah, the lady who, like, opens up her coat and she's like, I got a galaxy in here, what do you want? And then it's like, I was like, what is happening? But yeah, she was pretty cool. And then the library was really pretty.
Yeah.
From Dino Meat to Nick Heat.
Funny.
Cigarettes, yummy, delicious cigarettes.
Yeah, like, yeah. It's quite the varying view of the future. What did you think of this little setup here, Tacoma?
So this is one of the ones where it's like, I think Mac's dream is probably my favorite because it's a, you know, Mac by 8th grade. I guess these girls are 8th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders.
Yeah.
She's put on like tough girl Mac, right? She wears combat boots and leggings under her jeans, and she's got short hair and a bomber jacket. This Mac has long hair, and she's the librarian's joking like, "Oh, you're taking out one of those naughty books that all the kids are reading." She's like, "Sweet Valley High," and that just had me cracking up, right? Because I remember all the kids reading, all the girls reading Sweet Valley High, and there were like 5,000 of them, right? And they were all over the library, and people were taking them out. And I remember being a snotty little kid in like 9th grade or something, and talking to the librarian about, you know, how lame it is that girls in high school are still taking out Sweet Valley High book. And the librarian, rightfully so, put me in my place. And she's like, "Hey, as long as they're reading, I don't care what they're taking out." And I'm like, okay, I didn't get that until like 20 years later, but we grow up. So so I thought that was really cool. And then, I like that the lady selling the things, like it's so hard to accurately predict the future in sci-fi. It always falls flat when like two things always fall flat, like references to like current things, and they even make fun of like references to things. Like there's an album they mentioned later, a band, and they're like, who is that? And they're like, just the biggest band ever. And it was like a one-hit wonder band.
Yeah.
So like it's just not good to reference things in literature if you're trying to make a lasting impression. Pop culture references fade, and then trying to guess what the future is going to be like, just go as crazy as you can. And that lady selling the wares inside her like galaxy expanding coat is as good as any other guess as to what the future will be like.
Or like the Apple eyeball phone that we see later.
And then they go to the library, as Rena talked about, and we get the Tree of Knowledge. So what did you guys think of the Tree of Knowledge in the library?
I thought it was very clever. I mean, like when I saw the tree, I was like, oh, that's fun. The only thing I will say about this scene though is with Mac. She is my least favorite of the Paper Girls, but they kind of did her dirty here because she asks the tree, is there a cure for, was it leukemia? And, it tells her yes. But then, spoilers, cough. And by the end, you still get the impression that she's still going to die.
Right.
Because the future thems that pop up later, there's no future Mac.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we tried all these different ways and da 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 da, and she's still. So I don't know. I thought that the concept itself was really cool, and it's almost like they tried to brace you because Aaron says, not to be a total wet blanket, Mac, but we don't know that for sure. It's almost like they were trying to brace you for the fact that she's still gonna die. And she's trying all of these ways, to figure out a cure and stuff like that for nothing. So, I don't know. That kind of bugged me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it does appear to be a big theme as we go through this, because as we're going through this in your reading, like, because they mess a lot around with the time travel stuff, and you don't get the impression, but when we get to the end, we realize that sort of like this thing happened because it did, and like it's just one line, and ultimately at the end that like your end is always your end, and that like if they never get sucked into a time travel thing, then no time travel probably ever existed, and yet they only got sucked in because time travel existed, and it's like, there's this
time loop. It's like a funnel time loop.
Well, it's a lot of like predetermined stuff we get into like at the end. And so the stuff with Mac is, I will say I thought this volume made Mac a more appealing character, like these two volumes, than she was probably previously for me. Like I felt like that she came up for me. And they give her a little bit of hope here, and then ultimately jerk it away. But I do think her journey in this particular volume is like these two volumes, I should say, is better than it had been. Kate, what did you think about Mac finding out maybe there's a chance and the way they handle that?
It gave me a lot of hope. Like I was like, oh, like maybe she'll actually maybe this will work. But I feel like I shouldn't have expected that. So I'm kind of disappointed, but I agree with you. I think these two volumes, she was a lot more like almost human, like she was a lot more comfortable around her friends, and she just she was just her, honestly. And she definitely became a more lovable character because I had mixed feelings about her up until now, and I like her, but I thought the tree was really cool. It looks like a Lego tree almost.
Minecraft Lego.
Yeah, like I remember making those with my dad, like little Lego trees in our lounge. So I thought the tree was really cool, and that it was like a computer that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically.
Okay. So we kick off. So that kind of ends our first issue of this volume, and then we kick off the thing, and we see Worry in the future. Tacoma, did you instantly remember that it was her when you read this the first time? The Worry we already met, or did you were like,
No, and not until they used the names. Like there is nothing here that made me think that old lady was the lady they met back in dinosaur times. Just use dinosaur times as an accurate descriptor of
Yeah.
the era. You know, it took me a while, and I don't know that I ever remembered it in my first read through. I remembered it this time when I'm reading it all consecutively.
right?
So that makes more sense, but it's also, you know, they say it later, but it's really clear that they're taking some sort of medication to deal with the effects of time travel, and
Right.
she's decided not to take it, and she's yeah, the Chelsea kid, they did not do well today, man. They really, I was so disappointed. New manager, they were ahead and then they let the other team tie it up. But anyway, side note, I just kind of dig that she's got this sort of like my son calls himself grandfather and he's an a-hole and thinks he knows everything and he really doesn't. I just want to die in peace and be with this, and I've got the true wisdom, not the guy who thinks he knows it all sort of thing. I always enjoy that dynamic when it's done right, and I think it's done pretty well here.
Yeah, they're like, when he comes in, and like, I know that we'd already talked about the fact that he had the name, like when they called him Japo before, that it was the same name. We're like, what? And like when he comes in and talks to her, and she's like, and they even put quotes when she calls him baby brother, like around the baby brother. And I was like, okay, that is her. And then so, yeah, that the two of them had somehow found their way to the far future, and that it really was him. So that was interesting. I picked it up fairly quick, but I think part of it is the way we've read this, for me at least. What did you think of the reveal of the two of them being in the future there, Rena?
Well, I recognized her right away because of the eye markings.
Yeah.
She had the same eye markings. I did find it interesting, though, that he doesn't know that he is her son,
right?
Not brother, sister. I found that kind of interesting that they concealed that from him. And I'm sure it was probably because, you know, because later they show, you know, when they jumped from the past to the future and how they kind of blended into modern society, they probably did that to protect themselves. But I still think it's interesting that, you know, how many years has gone by and he still doesn't know.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Kate, what did you think about that reveal?
I didn't even recognize her for a second, and then they used her name, and I was like, oh, that's I called her the Jungle Lady, so not the dinosaur era, but Jungle Lady.
Jungle Lady, that works.
Dinosaur Jungle.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a Jungle Lady, and then I like kept reading it, and I did think it said my sister, and I was like, did I miss something? I thought that was her son.
Yeah.
And their age difference, she was pretty young, right?
Yeah, because she wasn't much older than the Paper Girls when they.
Yeah, she was like 13, 14. Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes sense how they could conceal that age gap.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, my sister, like, what did I miss? Like, I feel like, And then they do kind of act like siblings with the way they're like bantering back and forth with like the medication, and they're obviously taking some sort of injections for time traveling. I feel like it's kind of sad for like him, you know, like he's living with his sister, but he doesn't know it's his mom, you know, like it's kind of sad. But yeah, the reveal that like Japo was the grandfather too, it was like subtle, but like, yeah, I was like, whoa, everything just ties together, you know?
Yeah, and it goes back to this weird thing of like, if it seems like if they had never time traveled, then none of this ever happened. Yet they only had time travel because some of it had happened. It was just like this weird, you know, loop that actually
And
exist.
the woman who invented time travel, was only there because they were there, but yet somehow the jungle people already had modern technology. Yeah. I mean, I feel like they left so much unexplained.
Yeah. So
Oh,
go
well,
ahead.
and also, just quick segue. Later on, was it my imagination or did they just start like throwing in random duplicates? Because I know at the very, very end, you get kind of like all the future generations of the girls who are still alive. But like, there's a point where they get to talk to Wari, and she's like, "Well, you were here only a couple of days ago,"
Well,
and
the
it's
one explains it though later.
It was the other Aaron, right?
Yeah, the one that we see
oh, I
she
was
said
like,
that she did it to leave a message for them, basically.
okay, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Are you telling me like there's multiple iterations of the loop going on here? Or yeah, so I was like, that doesn't quite make sense. Cause like I knew they popped up later, but I didn't connect that it was them messing with things for the main girls.
Yeah, it was the one. It was the one who left the note in the library
Yeah.
or in the hid the secret note
Mhm.
that you needed the password to unlock or whatever.
Yeah. So the next big thing we get is they basically once again decide that they're going to split up because Mac is going to go for a cure, and Aaron and Tiffany Double O Tiff are going to go for trying to find their way out of here, back to their own time. But we get a lot of KJ and now I'm writing
Mac.
Mac.
we just said her name.
Mac.
Mac. Yeah, we get a lot of KJ and Mac on their own. What did you guys think of KJ's attempts to try to talk to Mac, and how that whole plays out here? Because we get, because we'd seen previously when she saw the future of them kissing and how Mac reacts to her confession. What did you guys think of that? Kate, I'll let you go the first this time.
Okay. I feel like Mac's pretty clueless just in general with that kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
like adding in that they're from the 80s, right? Not the 90s?
late 80s. Yeah, it's like 88.
Okay. Yeah,
They're my
it wasn't.
age.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah, the 80s weren't super like open with that kind of stuff too, like being just gay. Like a lot of people weren't okay with it. So Mac's like first reaction, it's understandable considering the era that they were living in, and depending on what town they were living in, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of funny to watch like KJ's attempts because she tries over and over, and then Mac just kind of like shuts it down, or people keep like interrupting it. I kind of felt bad for her though, because it's kind of a tough thing to tell one of your friends.
yeah.
But yeah, and then the part at the end with the walkie-talkie where it's Mac's voice, that confused me because
And that one they didn't explain very well because we
yeah,
see
like
they
how
say it later, but it's just like a weird.
They don't wrap that up.
Yeah,
yeah, it didn't make sense how her voice like almost traveled timelines basically, like jumped through time to tell young Mac that, and
Yeah.
I was just like,
that one was a weird one. That was one of the more unexplained little time things that they have go on for sure.
yeah.
Rena, what did you think about KJ and Mac, and kind of just in this whole volume, just kind of talking about their conversations when they're on their own here? And
So this is actually one of those examples I mentioned earlier of them moving it along a little too fast. So I know the buildup was for KJ to eventually tell Mac what she saw, but I feel like they went too fast from when she finally tells Mac to when they have the kiss, because Mac pushes her and says, "That's disgusting. Don't touch me. You're a pervert." So like she like says all these awful things because she's trying to process what KJ says. And then post one doctor visit where KJ helped save her life, and then they suddenly kiss. I mean, like, I guess it was supposed to be that Mac was enamored with KJ because KJ had done this really badass thing to like save her life and da 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 da. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like they should have had more in between. Like, I feel like there should have been more build up where you have Mac in that first instance of her freaking out to when they actually get to that point at the sunset at the kiss.
So my thought on that, and then I'll let Tacoma and Kate follow up, is that I think a lot of that had to do with Mac going that far that quickly. Had to do with the fact that she just found out that no, she was going to die. Like that it wasn't going to. It didn't matter. Like that there was no cure. That her time really was going to be this short. That like they went to the doctor and it didn't work. And she realizes she does care about KJ, even though she's not sure that to me, it's like she's not sure what she feels at that point, but she's just like, why not live? Kind of, why not go for it kind of thing. It's where I think she's at, but I'm curious what everyone else, Tacoma or Kate, what do you guys think about that? Either one.
So I think I would disagree with Rena a little bit. Mac is coded as a lesbian from Volume 1, Page 1, right? And Mac may not realize it fully. She may, as Kate said, have an upbringing that is strongly homophobic. And I think that her pushing her away was a knee-jerk reaction that was more to do with, this is crazy, this is not what I was raised to believe is right, than you being able to search her own feelings. Or, I mean, none of these girls have really had a time to like sit back, talk on the phone about their feelings, hang out with their friends, watch movies. It's all going fast. But I mean, you and I both held up that right there.
Yeah.
That's art telling the missing part of the story to me. That's Cliff Chang saying, okay, she realizes something. She's realizing it pretty quickly. And it's weird being told that you're going to be a certain way or there's a certain thing that's going to happen, and then like coming to terms with it. But I don't have a problem with the speech that happened, because I think that the hints were there all along, and the hints were working against Mac's upbringing and the way she was taught to feel and think about certain things. And again, I mean, look at just this picture. Let me see if I can point to the right one. Right there. I mean, just like, oops, let's see. There we go. Like Cliff Chang, I think, does a really great job in filling in the parts that maybe the writing. Sorry.
No, I was too slow. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Cliff Chang does a really great job in filling in some of the parts that I think if it was just reading the written words, I would agree. It seems fast, but I think that there is subtle little things going on there. Plus, I think it wasn't a revelation to Brian K. Vaughan that Mac was this way. He was writing her that way from the beginning. So I was weird to happen. I like happy endings. I just want to point out, this has nothing to do with your question, how gorgeous that particular piece of art is. That's so sad. That's just the walkie-talkie in hand. Like, that just moves me. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Kate, what about you? What did you think of Rena's point? That it moved too fast? Was it right? What did you think of it?
Honestly, I thought it was some parts were rushed and then other parts weren't, because I felt like they jumped into the kiss and they jumped it back out, and they kind of had it slow for a while and they jumped back into their like romance. They're together for, I feel like, a lot of this book, and I feel like they jumped quickly out of the romance and back into the friendship, which that's fine with me. They're still like close friends after. That's good. But
yeah. Well, I mean, trying to figure it out, I think, is part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And then, yeah, I think Mac pushing KJ was some form of like internalized homophobia almost, where she was just kind of like, yeah, her upbringing a lot, but like internalized homophobia was like really active in those moments.
Yeah.
And I think she definitely realizes in the doctor's office that she's made some sort of like mistake by pushing KJ, and she's like, oh, like maybe maybe this would be different than what I'm imagining it as. And I think it develops nicely over the rest of the book, but I did feel like the kiss, like that kind of stuff was like kind of rushed into. But I like their storyline a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Trying to think of where to like focus. So the next one is like the other thing going on is Aaron and the two Tiffanys find Worry, who sort of remembers, sort of doesn't, depending on when you're talking to her.
He's having problems, yeah.
Yeah. And basically they're, trying to figure out, and we get that Aaron left Aaron a message. What did you guys think about this whole and the map and like how to get them to this rooftop? What did you think about the way this whole storyline played out? Was it super confusing? Did it make sense? How did you guys think about the way to get them into this position that they're trying to get them, that the future people are trying to get them into, as it turns out? Rena, what did you think about that from a storytelling standpoint?
I don't know. I kind of am indifferent with that whole thing. I thought it was fun that they got to see Worry again and got to talk to her. I think Worry is very quickly become one of my more favorite characters, especially when you catch that glimpse of her at the end, driving the car. I feel like it was almost slightly plot convenience that she had, the message that they needed to finally take this whole adventure to a close. Because if you think about it, and I know I've said this in the previous shows, but they really have just been running with no clue as to what they're supposed to be doing this whole time.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they get this message that's like, oh yes, here is a point in the right direction.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was also kind of fun getting to see like their backstory a little bit, and like, when they decide, when Worried and decides to go to the modern world with, her son. Like one of my favorite panels is like when they show her eyes from the dinosaur time, and then they show her eyes to now, and it's like, even though she's older and she's weathered, like the glow in her eye is still the same, and her eyes are still the same. I thought that was a good panel.
Yeah, what was that? I just saw that panel.
Yes.
Now I'm trying to find it again. There it is. Okay, yeah, you got it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You have her here, and then you have her. Oh, if I can straighten my.
Yeah, it's on the next page. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
No, you're right. It's a great little sequence there.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Well, anybody else have anything on the Worry stuff?
So I kind of, not the Worry stuff, but what Rena was saying, I kind of agree. Like, it is a little bit plot convenient. I had actually forgotten this character. Like, so when she showed up and then she's like, you girls are no good together. And it turns out she wasn't Aaron trying to help them so much as Aaron trying to put an end to it by any means possible, even if that means scattering them to the winds of time. Right. That felt just abrupt to me. I was like, wait, I got to remember which, if that was one of the other characters we'd seen a lot of, I would have been better. But that one, I was like, where was she from again? When did they meet her? Like, she hadn't made that big of an impression on me to be a recurring character.
And what is she trying to accomplish at that point? Which it doesn't make a whole.
She has to put an end to it, but that kind of just left us thinking like, okay, she must have gone through something I wasn't quite sure what she had gone through. Like, she wasn't a character with any emotional resonance.
Yeah.
Right. She just kind of showed up to start off, give us something to start off book 6 with.
Yeah.
4 different time periods,
Right.
An old timey newspaper gang.
Yeah, they have another time shift basically, because every volume basically we get a time shift at the start of it, and or the end of the one and the start of the next volume. And it's like, I will say for me, like maybe the most ineffective characters in terms of why they exist and what they're using, other than they look familiar to the girls, are the Aaron clones. It's like, what purpose do they her having been cloned, what purpose does that really serve the story, other than it gives them a face of the future kids or whatever that are like, looks like them. I don't know.
And KJ got cloned too.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
see
KJ
eventually
clone.
we see
Yeah.
a KJ clone, which is
Out of the
again,
blue.
it just seems kind of odd. I don't know. But yeah, we see them get, scattered to time. KJ goes back to like the 50s, and Matt goes to the end of time, and Aaron goes to basically like 1990 or something, like right around the time they left, and I forget, and Tiffany goes to the far, far future. It's like, yeah, but I still have yet to figure out what that Aaron was trying to accomplish, other than the setup story 6 where they're apart. Like, what about you, Kate? What did you think of the way they split them here? Did it make sense to you? Did it work?
Kind of. I think the like random drop in of that clone of Aaron again was kind of like sudden and sort of like random, I guess.
Yeah.
Because she like you said, she didn't really have much of a purpose besides like what Tacoma said, like just launching them to the farthest ends of the universes, just like all in different times, all separated again. And I guess there's like a point, I guess, for like it's in season episode 6, sorry, book 6. But yeah, I feel like the random drop in for the Aaron clone was kind of random. And
Yeah.
I almost had forgotten that she was part of the story, because she was in the like previous books, yeah, but she wasn't really introduced for a while, and then she like just popped back in quickly too. So yeah, I feel like the random drop in was just really random.
All right. Well, that moves us to volume 6, and it kicks off with another dream. This time we're back around to Aaron starting off with a dream, but this time we see that Aaron's getting a message, and she's like actually trying to listen. They continue to try to listen to the messages in the dream, which is go back, where it began. But so what did you think about the setup, the different times they all got sent to, with KJ being in the even further into the 50s, and Matt going to the future, and what did you guys think of the times they got sent to? Rena, let's start with you this time.
I guess I don't really know what the message is that Aaron is trying to ascertain when she wakes up and she's like in the bridal gown.
Yeah.
I did find it interesting that she is near apples again, and she's like, it's the apple tree is like yelling at her. I thought it was a little weird that it was her sister. Like, I guess they were trying to make a parallel to when she had her first nightmare in the beginning to this one, because in the other one, she was concerned for her sister's safety, and all this stuff. And now it's her sister who's about to like shoot her. Until like the Tiffany in the white suit intervenes.
The Michael Jackson Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it's like we have a message for you, and then we're all going to burn. Like, first of all, that was not a necessary image I needed in my brain. Thank you very much.
No.
Yeah, and I didn't really get it. Like, I know that it was like, other than to draw the parallel to the very first dream that she had at the beginning of the series, I didn't pull anything significant out of it, really, because all that happens next is she just wakes up on the street. I'm like, in my opinion, they could have just picked it up right there. So I don't know.
And I will say, like, having read all of it now, I feel like the Apple stuff was just like, did Brian and Cliff get a check from Apple to do? Because they didn't really, like, the Apples didn't really play any sort of role. And, like, it was just like they just chose.
Yeah, I mean, Kate mentioned that during our first one. She's like all into the symbolism of the apple and how it would be used throughout it, and it just seemed to fade. Like,
Although,
but
no, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
no, I don't really know what to say. So go ahead. It's like I don't get the apple. I mean, tree of knowledge, original sin, forbidden knowledge.
Right. Which I was going to say, it just kind of seems to me that whole buildup was just for Aaron's line right at the end. Like right at the end before you have your epilogue volume 30. There is a scene where Aaron picks up the little Aaron device, the little Apple device. And she goes, what Eve did in the Garden of Eden, I don't think it was evil. It was smart. It was right. And then one of the clones goes, does anyone know what she's talking about? And they just kind of gloss over it. I feel like that maybe that's what that whole thing was building up to, but I'm not exactly sure what the significance of it was, other than maybe just the message of like ignorance is bliss. Because their memories get wiped there. So I don't know. Other than that, I don't really see the tie of the apple, other than maybe the message of ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, I mean they kind of in the all the way back in volume 1, they set Aaron up as the new girl, who I guess was a bit more book smart, or like read books a bit more than the other girls. That was kind of her thing, and had this knowledge. She knew, to send herself notes. She figured out some codes, but like they didn't really continue with that theme strongly enough to make it something to want to like return to. Like I didn't really care about that part of her by the end. It seemed more that her new girl status was more interesting than her smart girl status.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, and I don't get this, like the symbolism. And there's a lot in this opening dream, right? Her sister's got laser tag outfit on. She's in, I don't know if it's I guess a veil, so I guess it's a wedding dress, but it looks like almost a prom wedding dress, or like a confirmation wedding dress. She's eating an apple pie. Like they didn't just choose to make it apple pie. It's an apple pie. There's the Michael Jackson there. There's mushrooms there, but like there's the scary yelling tree that's got apples in it. Like, I'm not quite sure what this is saying.
Well, and ultimately I get like, and they talk about
and then there's all the trick-or-treaters. You've got it.
Yeah. But I mean, they talk about it later in the fact that they're like trying to use the dreams to send them messages, and like dreams don't always make sense. So some of it's just like random dream stuff, I think, and then some of it's like they're trying to send them a message, but it always kind of like breaks down, but it doesn't work very well. But it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure what all of it accomplishes, and I feel that way. I'll be honest about a lot of this volume, like. With them being separated,
you did not like it till the end.
Like, there you go. Yeah. And maybe I'm the only one, but like we get Tiffany goes to the future, and she gets this whole exposition dump from the future people about how they have to wrap this up, and Aaron goes and meets Japo and gets this whole exposition dump about why they were trying to do what they were doing. The grandfather and stuff was trying to do what they were doing. And Matt goes to the really far future and gets this whole exposition dump about how Rory and Japo came to be, and like, and then KJ's just like basically tying together the lady that they met before that did the cartoons, and basically tying together the three guys, why the three guys know who they are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I felt like most of this volume, and this is where I was like starting to really like fade on the whole thing, was about, okay, we did all this crazy crap. Let's start tying it together, and we're just gonna force it to work. And here's a whole bunch of exposition. Am I the only one that felt that way about like these? Because even when we get like the panels where we're getting the pages where we're getting like Tiffany at the top and Mac and KJ and yeah, even when we're getting to that part, like a lot of that just didn't work very well for me. What did you guys think? I'm very curious to see what you guys thought of. Was it issues 28 and 29? I feel like, is that the two?
28 primarily, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 28, I guess, is really, but well, even 26 and 27 when they're off on their individual parts of it where they're not all on the same page. What did you guys think of this whole section?
Again, I felt like you wanted it to start wrapping up, but it's only really wrapping up, like you said, through exposition, and that's not a good way. Like all this craziness, and you've got these four, beautifully colored different like eras and different things going on. You got the clones, you got that lady, you've got the guy that from the beginning that she found, and then you got Joppo here with a gun to her head, and it's like, okay, is this wrapping up or is this showing us something new? I think that's where my problem was. Or is it just showing us something new in order to wrap up? Like, if it's something new, it should be cool enough to hold our interest to want to learn more about it. But you kind of felt like they were getting to the end, but like they had to do exactly 30 issues or something. It's pacing and its reasoning lost me a little bit.
Yeah. Kate, what did you think about these couple of issues and this whole the way they addressed them being separated?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the dream at the beginning.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, did I skip you on the dream? I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just had one real point. It was like it was like an apple pie now, and like volume 6 is an apple pie, and in the first one it was just an apple. Right. So it just kind of like developed, into an apple pie. And I feel like it kind of shows that, like, I don't know, time has passed almost. It's some form of symbolism. I don't really know how to define, but yeah,
like
developed from an apple to apple pie.
Okay. Yeah, the apple stuff, I don't know that maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand what they were going for there. But yeah, I see that actually makes a little bit of sense because there is like it's changing. Yeah, that the apple is changed into something else, and maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was just funny detail, but I did think that it's still confusing to me, and it didn't wrap up perfectly because I didn't understand, like, they always split them up, even though their chemistry together is so much better than when they're apart, like with other people. Them together is so much more enjoyable than them by themselves with a different group of people. Like, it's so much more enjoyable when they're with each other, and I feel like the authors constantly split them up, and I would have liked to see more of them just together.
Yeah.
I feel like they did that, like...
Go ahead, Rhea.
Oh, sorry. I feel like they did that slightly on purpose, though. I mean, because if you think about it, the older versions of them tell them at the end, you will split up, but you will always be, the original group or whatever. And, you'll make new friends. I don't remember who exactly says that, but they're like trying to be encouraging about the fact that, they're not going to remember their adventure, and there's a very high chance that they split apart. But in the very last pages of issue 30, you have Aaron call out and be like, well, no, let's just ride around for a little bit. And bringing them back together for that final ending. As for this whole sequence, this was the other part that I thought that, they kind of showed that they were rushing. I thought it was very visually dynamic, having the split 4 panels with the different color palettes for each girl. I thought it was very visually dynamic, but there's way too much going on, and they rush it in like 15 pages or so, before Mac comes crashing down, and you were at your final showdown location. Which, was anybody else cracking up that the final showdown was literally in like an old Western type town, right in the middle at high noon? Was that just me? But no, I feel like they rush it way too fast. Like, Jappo just kind of found her, and then what was with the split? The split where you see the evil, sketch out in the grass from the dinosaur period just wreck all their worlds all of a sudden.
Well, like, I feel like what that's supposed to represent is that, and what they're ultimately coming to, like, the reason they're coming to a surrender is they've come to the realization that all the time travel they've been doing is like effing with the universe. And like there's going to be consequences that could rip time apart, so they have to like stop. And that's one of them. That thing, that split that goes across all the time periods where the girls are, is one of them. Like, they got to get them back to like keep the timeline together. But I don't know, it felt like they sent them on this adventure, and for me, and they just didn't have, they're like, well, this whole issue where they got them in 4 different places and they split them up was like, well, we got to explain as much of this as we can, and then before we have the final issue, which is really the issue we want. And it was just like, I don't know. That's why it just didn't, a lot of that didn't work for me, because it's like, it is just a giant exposition of, well, this is what was all this stuff was going on, but this is why they don't remember, and ultimately just to get you back to that final chapter. And like, I don't know, this whole volume 6 just really didn't work very much for me until you get to the final chapter. Is there anything else you guys want to say before we talk about the final chapter? Go ahead, Rena.
2 things for me. One, during all those split panels, I feel like, they almost robbed, again, she's not my favorite, but they almost kind of robbed some really beautiful scenery when Mac is with the woman who invented time travel and she dies. You get just a couple of panels of this green spiral, sky, and like there's silhouettes in one, and then Mac is standing holding the staff in one. I feel like those may have been so much better as big stills as like some of the panels we've gotten throughout the series. But it's almost kind of robbed because you have, all the other stuff going on in these split panels. That was one thing. And then the second thing that I both like and dislike about the ending, the finale, when it's just them and grandfather. One, I like that he gets poked by the freaky alien eyeball monster. I thought that was kind of, I don't know why my first instinct was to laugh, but I thought that was kind of funny. But I feel like it was too easy. He gets poked and all of a sudden he's like, oh,
he remembers everything.
My life is a lie. And then he just lets them go. Like, I'm sorry, but you've been fighting a war for how long? And you've been mad at these girls for how long? And that's it? So that's kind of one of those, they wrapped it up way too fast. But that was really just my only. They even kind of make a joke about it too, where the girls are like saying their final goodbye, and then they just zap Mac in the back, and they're like, sorry, but time is of the essence. They're like, and KJ's like, we didn't even get to say goodbye, and the older Tiffany is like, and all that you're failing right now is about to disappear too. Zap. Like, it's almost like they were making a joke out of it.
They did. And so, Kate, what about you? Anything before we talk about anything else you want to discuss before we talk about the final issue?
I did think that the thing with the grandfather was very anticlimactic, and I was expecting more from it. But I don't know. It felt like, yeah, just really rushed. I don't know. This whole volume felt very rushed with the way it was ended and like everything with grandfather. Plus, there's only like what 9 little panels of his life that he sees, and he just like his whole mindset is flipped completely. Like the whole script for him is flipped because of like a few images he saw about his life, which none of them really include the girls. Like
Right.
nothing that would really impact that. And
Well, other
yeah,
than them, he does see them saving, like KJ.
yeah,
He does see that, but yeah,
Saving the fathers.
fighting the fathers and protecting him from them. But no, you're right. It's very odd. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's just it's like Rena said, like his whole mindset is flipped, and he's been fighting a war for God knows how long, and it's just flipped in a matter of seconds, and it felt very anticlimactic.
Yeah. Anything else before I go to Tacoma that you want to talk about from that? Okay. Ian, what about you?
Sorry, did you say Tacoma?
Yes.
I was interrupting me, I think. Sorry, yeah. What I said originally is that if you follow the story of the arc of the girls and don't worry about the time travel stuff, it's a really good story. But then volumes 2 through 5, when you read them all together, they're in graphic format rather than monthly issues, actually tell a nice kind of cool time story with some funky stuff going on. But then by volume 6, I'm kind of back to my original statement. Like, it's convoluted. It doesn't quite make sense. Just follow the arc of the girls again. So it's like I went back and forth between which way to really relish this book and really understand this book.
Yeah.
And, with the grandfather being like, oh, sorry, I was wrong. Sorry about all that Time War stuff. Let's go. And, yeah, it's like now I'm back to thinking it's the arc of the girls that really matter, not the rest of it. So,
well, and for me, I think that's ultimately what I think is the misstep of volume 6 is they spend basically 26, 27, 28, and 29 trying to pull together all these like loose threads that they created through all the time travel and like explain them to some certain extent to set up the girls finally going back to 1988. And I just don't think they needed it. Like for me, I didn't need an explanation of like how all this worked and how all the different loops reconnected together. Like I just want tell me the story about these girls and then get to the end and they get, well, we got to send you back. And I didn't need all the exposition and stuff about time travel. And, if you're only going to give me Jappo's give me a page of his backstory, why are we bothering it with it at all? And like,
especially when Mac, when she was poked by the alien, got 2 pages of her, video game addiction. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, like I got into issue 29 and I'm like, this is really like dropped off for me. And then your dad's like, felt like the ending worked well, key elements were tied up. For me, all of that is 30. Like, because it's really the elements of them that I wanted tied up. And like 30 worked well enough for me to make up for the mess I think 27, 28, 29 are. But so let's talk about it. The last issue. I'm gonna let Rena go mostly first. I'm gonna let Kate go first this time. What did you think of the final issue?
Just like this whole thing.
Yeah, the whole final issue, just in general or specific parts, like how they do actually wrap it up here, because we get basically they put them back a couple hours, basically when they left, which is a couple hours after they got up before, and have them just like remember getting up and already starting their paper route, so they have to start all over. So what did you think about? Obviously, we get Mac we start with a Mac dream, and then we go
Yeah.
into the issue of all the girls starting their routes, meeting Aaron again for the first time.
Mhm.
What did you think about all of that issue and how it came together?
I thought it was kind of cool how they still had like little tiny fragments of things they knew, like with I think it was Tiffany coming through the door, right? With the gun
Yeah,
in Mac's dream.
right.
So it was kind of cool that like Mac kind of subconsciously like remembers certain aspects of what happened. And yeah, watching them like do their paper route again, and they're all kind of like just kind of they like I don't know how to describe it. They're like on the edge of knowing what happened, but they don't know it. You know, like they
Yeah.
have some sort of subconscious thing in their mind where they know there's something, but they can't like pinpoint it. Just like
Right.
Mac not being able to recognize Erin by her name, and she's like, "Oh, what's her name?" And then she's like, "Erin," and then she's like, "That's it." And then she's like, "That was her name." So it was just like they know things and they don't really like know they know it almost until someone else mentions it. And I thought the like Erin and her sister with the like the scar on her stomach, and she's like, "Oh, that's like it's not a tattoo, it's a rash or something." And
Yeah.
then so there's just like certain aspects that of things, just like little details that they should remember, but because they were zapped, they like kind of remember it, not really.
Right. Well, but you, Rena, what did you think of how they kicked this issue off and like this final issue?
I mean, I thought that for the girls they did a good job at tying it back for them. I kind of like all the subtle hints, like Tiffany, is not going to be playing her game anymore. She's like, "What are you doing? You're wasting your life," and she like flicks it, which was a big deal for her early on in the series. I like also when she wakes up, she's still kind of mumbling, "We're not just paper girls, we're friends."
Well, they all kind of are mumbling, a little bit.
Yeah. I like how Wari comes in and like saves them from getting hit by the drunk Jeep, and just her smug smile. She's driving off with the sunglasses and the hat. That cracked me up a whole bunch. And like how they're all smoking at the end, that kind of cracked me up too. Like, yeah, Aaron's like
artistically, that's a great panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I think they did a good job tying it up for them. And I appreciate that, they it's almost like they fake you out with a fake ending where they're zooming out of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the little wait. And they come back, and your actual final panel is them biking away together. I thought that was really good as well. There was something else too. What was it? Dang it, now I'm not going to be able to remember. But I don't know. I thought it was a good ending for them. The other thing was you get the impression that maybe they're still in the loop, because if you think about it, in the very first issue, when they bump into future Aaron, she's like, "Lift up your shirt." And she's like, "It just appeared one morning and I had no idea what it was." And now you have our Aaron who just woke up with no recollection of where it came from. So, and at this point in the time loop, they would have already had her DNA to create clones, and everything plays out till Mac dies, and then Mackenzie, or why do I keep saying Mackenzie? Tiffany would, eventually grow up and then bump into her younger self and wouldn't remember it because their minds have been wiped. I mean, it almost feels like to me they set it up to where they're still going to live.
Well, everything's a loop. Yeah. All of it still happens.
Yeah, and that's why, when you have, your oldest Tiffany at the end and all the clones, they're like, we're at the end of our rope. We now know the full story. We know that we end up in happiness. Time to get you back where you're supposed to be. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting that they put in those little subtle drops where you can tell that they're still in the time loop.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. And it does explain why none of their future selves remember what the heck happened. So yeah.
Yeah. No, they're definitely still in it. I mean, the only thing you get that maybe they're not is when Aaron says wait. And like, because they
Wait,
say
and
they
they all
drifted
come
apart,
back.
and like, it's like, oh, well, maybe they'll remember. And it's, even though they're not, I don't think they're going to. But Tacoma, what do you think of this final issue and how they wrap up their story? Any points you want to bring
It's
up?
really nice, right? I mean, not really. It makes you feel like it was worth getting here,
Right.
right? Because it's just really nice. And I think, again, the artwork just is so spot on.
Like,
Like
Chris Bane is amazing.
yeah, it makes you kind of like, it puts you in the air. Like, listen, I was going to, I grew up on Long Island, so I was going to bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs in like 1980, 13, so 19 like 83, 84, and like I know girls that wore that dress to like junior prom and eighth grade prom.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've seen that dress before many times. It just like put me right back there, and then they're at the bar mitzvah, and it's just like the Sarah Connor Terminator is Tiffany, right? Like everything is just a little bit different. But even like this one where, remember she stole the Walkman from her brother,
Yeah.
and he's like, I can't go to sleep, like James and Lars, like just all those subtle little things are really cool. And even like just that one is just like just a beautiful panel, right? And
Yeah.
so sorry, there it is.
Yeah.
So I just love that they're all kind of going off and meeting, but Rena's absolutely right. It's the subtle little differences. Tiffany's not as enamored of her video game. They all stick together a bit stronger. They make a better stand against these idiot guys. They do get the help from Future Wari, which is really cool. So it's just nice how like they're retelling the first issue, but it just slightly skews differently for all of them.
Yeah.
And then New Girl kind of, doesn't want it to end, and she's like, "Wait, let's just write a bit more." But I think this is my favorite panel of the whole, the whole book. Right there is like, three of them have just started smoking for the first time, but they're not coughing or choking, and that just cracked me up too, because your first cigarette,
yeah,
not a pleasant experience usually. So I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was comforting to read. It was easy to read, and it left you with an overall good feeling.
For sure. All right. Well, final thoughts on Paper Girls as a whole. Rena, we'll let you go. We've been going that way most of the time. We'll let you go first, Rena.
Overall, as a whole, I would say that it was a good. My brain isn't here is so bright. I have the dry one.
The complete, yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So I would say that I like the story overall because I like how they developed throughout, and I like the girls because they're so real. I mean, they talk like real girls, and they did a really good job writing them as if they were real teenagers in these situations. So I feel like the story was very organic, and I liked them, except for Mac, throughout the whole thing. But I would say that the plot itself, it wasn't my favorite. I mean, if they had taken the time to clean it up a little bit, have it a little bit more sense, or even just taking the same girls and putting them in a completely different situation, I feel like the girls themselves are really good. But the whole situation, the whole plot, the whole story that gets it rolling really did nothing for me. I didn't care about the war. I didn't care when it segued to, the grandfather and his troops. I didn't care when you saw the side characters. Like, I was really only in it to see the girls get to the end, which is probably partially the point. But I would say that it did, bring it down for me overall as a first read through.
Okay. Kate, what about you? What are your final thoughts?
Overall, I did really like the story. I thought it was confusing a lot. Sorry, there's like stuff back here, but I did think a lot of it was confusing, and it's kind of hard to get past that kind of stuff, especially if you are reading a complex story and you're trying to form an opinion about it,
Yeah.
I really liked the characters. I really liked KJ. Really liked KJ. Like Rena said, they're all very natural characters, and they're all very much like how I know teenagers. Like, I would definitely go to school. I definitely go to school with people like some of these girls.
Right.
And I think the author did a good job of just supplying that teenage feeling. And there's also the nostalgia factor that Tacoma touched upon a bunch of times, where there's a bunch of just references and things that you guys kind of grew up with. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. Overall, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10, maybe a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. That seems pretty close, I think. Tacoma, or to what I think as well. Tacoma, go ahead.
I wonder, to what extent this had to be a time travel story to tell the story. Right, like I almost wanted it more to be about 1988, just to kind of have that nostalgia factor and a bunch of paper girls going through trials and tribulations. The trials and tribulations that they showing them glimpses of different future selves and putting them in these harrowing situations where they had to think or fight their way out was interesting, but I don't know that it was the greatest choice, or that it was that they did the greatest job with the choice that they made. I mean, clearly you need external forces to cause some sort of problem for the girls to overcome and to mature and learn from. And it some of it was interesting, but a lot of it felt superfluous in the end, since they didn't wrap any of it up in a way that made us feel comfortable, and some of it you had to struggle to follow, which hurts your enjoyment of the story, as Kate said, right? If you're really thinking about and trying to remember people, you're not just enjoying a good story.
Yeah.
So it's that balance between too difficult or to follow, yet too simplistic to enjoy, I guess. And sometimes they went a little too far into the too difficult to follow.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to tell the story of these girls and put them in really fantastical situations, but in the end, I don't know that any of that was necessary. Like you said, it sort of for me really took away from it in that last volume when they tried to tie some of that up and together, the fantastical time travel stuff. Whereas really, I just wanted to spend more time with these four characters, and I don't feel like. Outside of Worry, I don't feel like any of the other people they met along the journey really landed for me as a character that I cared about. I'm with Kate. I think KJ ended up being my favorite character of the group, for sure. But I think, a 7 out of 10 is probably about right for me. I mean, I did enjoy it, but it definitely had enough flaws that was that I felt just because they went I think they just went a little overboard with the sci-fi time travel stuff to make in weird situations that I don't think was really necessary to tell the story they ended up telling. But that's just me. It was good, not great, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But yeah, so with that, I've kept you guys longer than I intended, so I know it's late for everybody. Any final things you want to point out before we get out of here? I'll give you one last shot for anything.
Does anybody watch the show yet?
I have not.
I've only seen episode 1, and a lot of people freaked out when it got canceled, but I didn't hear people talking about it in glowing terms before that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those things. I'm following a lot of people on Twitter and comic book creators like, oh, I can't believe they canceled it. I'm like, nobody was telling me this was a great story.
Yeah.
I thought it was an okay first episode.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Well, I still do want to try to watch it, but yeah, I have not made the time yet. So that
It's got to join the list.
yeah, I have a really long list of shows I'm behind on. So, all right, with that, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank Bobby and Sharon stayed with us almost to the end. Kate was still hanging out. Perry, some guy named John, I don't know, Magic Lasso was in here. So thank the people that hung out with us tonight. I want to thank my panel for doing this with me. Always appreciate it. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Later, everybody.
Bye.